All right, I think this is game 4 of the quarterfinals between Stuff and SirSmokes. Stuff is first turn here. Um, so far, I think Stuff has played two really good matches coming into this one, and Smokes, I think, has also played really well coming into this one. I've thought Smokes has played better so far, and I think Smokes has been in top form. I still favor him to win this matchup. I have been curious about the card choices. We see a 1789 here. Interesting, do you go on your 9-8? Do you go like 9854, 9843? Or do you go 9871? And I like the idea of 9871. And another thing that Smokes did well in previous games is I liked his use of the 1797. The rules are same plus wall, but no plus. And the fewer rules like plus, the more raw power is valuable and dynamism is less valuable. And I wouldn't have immediately realized that 1797 is the way to go, but it has sure looked the way to go from the games we've seen. On the 8-7 card, what's the rules? On the 8-8 card, it's been interesting to see more from Smokes usually, but like an 8-7-8. But now we're seeing Stuff use one. So we're seeing Stuff adapting to what he's seeing from Smokes and what looks convincing from Smokes' side. Now, one thing about the 9871s is two of them have ones facing up. I don't know if there's other 9717 type cards, but this does mean he has two ones facing up, and I'm a little worried about that. But if you want to play a 9871 type card that's a wheel card, that's your only choices of a 1 up. There is 8791 and 9187. They might have the 7s face and the 1s facing the other ways, but the point is the 9 and 8s are on opposite sides, and those are two opposites, Weegraph and Elena. And I won a tournament finals at some point. Was it a finals? Maybe it was a round 1. Either way, I beat Yojimbo in some tournament that I did end up winning. I think it might have been Rufus. Yeah, Rufus makes sense. It was pretty late in the run. And I was kind of proud of that because at that point in time, I had moved off putting much effort into making hands, which was a really terrible decision I wish I hadn't done. But that one I had adapted to something I'd noticed Yojimbo was better at than me, which is I tended to just pick dynamic cards at whatever level. Like level 8, 8765s. Level 10, 8876s, right? Level 7, 8764s. I just always just mashed all of those, and it stopped building hands and just sort of kind of put together as many dynamic power cards as I could. And something I had noticed he was doing a lot better than me was sometimes just taking pure power cards. Like his use of Larsa was really important, and that was kind of the biggest example. But there were a number of times he would take more raw power, and I was clearly underestimating that. And I think something that happened there was if I was card selecting, I would just pick dynamic cards I liked. If I was carefully building a hand, it would include some higher power cards because those would find ways to fit into the hand, but I wasn't making hands fit so well. And that ended up being a real weakness of mine that he exploited. There's an Occult fan where he talks about how it was exploitable. But that game, I played well. I used 879s. I took this higher raw power, and their greater numbers ended up being really, really valuable. And one of them was really tough for him to take early, and I think the other one swept the end game. Wish we had game records from back then. Though I'd be kind of horrified to look back at some of my losses, I'm sure. That said, I think the 9717 is the right way to go here. And 1789, instinctively, I kind of think is probably better than the 9854. But I do not like the two ones up, is my long way round to a point. Now, what would you do as a starter here? Your 9-9 is not remotely safe. Your 9-8 is also pretty unsafe. So one thing is, basically the hands, unless you use a 1797 type card, will not have a 9 in every direction. So I think the most important thing on the hands here is Smokes has made sure to have a 9 in every direction, and Stuff only has 8s to the right. And I wonder if Smokes will be able to create challenges there. Like I could imagine Smokes landing 7-2, 8-8, and 3, which is a very annoying card for stuff. And should he ever be forced to play 9, 4, 3, 9, and 6, first of all, now he's going to have a problem taking 8s down, and Smokes' 4, 9, 8, 5 might go off. But second of all, Smokes could then play 9, 3, 4, 9, and 9, and both the 9, 9s would be Smokes and pretty safe, as well as the possibility to recapture in 2. So I think 7, 2, 8, 8, and 3 might end up being a pretty significant problem. And I haven't really thought at all about what to do as a starter for stuff, but I think one thing to keep in mind was I would like to play a move that gives me play against that. Okay. Stuff finds a way to create a problem. Smokes doesn't have 4. So this does play against 1, because if Smokes goes 1, Stuff can now go 2 and feel very happy. So I like interactive moves. My instinct is for Smokes to go in 7 or 5. Trying to give play in 4. Smokes does not have combo potential in 2. So that draws me a little more towards 5. There's not a super obvious fit in 5. This might be a nice starter. Yeah, I think this is a good starter. I don't know what I'd do if I was Smokes. Hmm. I'm drawn to doing moves that I think are kind of anxious and not very good. Which is not really where you want to be. So one thing I note is in the matchup of 9-3-4-9 and 9-4-3-9. Oh, gotta remember no plus. That's really important. I've been forgetting that. But one thing to note there is they can each plus wall the other's 4. So one idea that came to mind for me is you can't really do 7, 2, 8, 8, and 2 because 1, 7, 8, 9 has a really strange plus wall. So if you want to take from 2, then you have to use 9, 3, 4, 9. That's really uncomfortable, actually. I figured there were 2 captures in 2, but there aren't. Oh, this is going to be very promising for stuff. This is going to be a difficult situation. I am not surprised Smokes hasn't moved yet, even though this is a 7-minute game, so 3.5 minutes have passed. Because I think this is a difficult card to meet. Maybe you do just go 7, 2, 8, 8, and 3. You say, I can't interact with this at all, but I can go in 3. That maybe threatens to go in 2, though I use all of my leftward power. Not all, but a lot of my leftward power if I want to do so. Right? You might think 7-5-5 is not actually bad to the left after those 2 cards are used, but given stuff has 2 7s and an 8 facing right, it ends up being overpowered. I think I'd just go 7, 2, 8, 8, 3 and say, like, I don't have better than this. I have received a message that they're playing. I will answer it so they know that their siren call has been heard. I think I just go 7, 2, 8, 8, and 3 and say, like, you don't have something great to put in 2. You can't really play 6 too comfortably. I don't have great play against your card, but I don't need it, I guess, is the hope. Alright. We have responded verbosely, as is our way. He does go 7, 2, 8, 8, 3. Yeah. This felt like the right direction in general, but I think Stuff made a good move for both discouraging it and for creating something himself. Alright, now you're trying to attack this as Stuff. One thing to note is basically, if you haven't set up against a card already, you will never set up against it, or very rarely. Because if you don't just have the plus wall, then the only way you can set up is same, and it's just really hard to set up sames. For instance, if you wanted to take that 8 facing down, you could only do so with your 8, 7, 8, 1, and you would need an 8 facing up, which you don't have, and which Smokes doesn't have either, or a 1 facing right, which neither hand has either, right? So that 8, 7, 8, 1 can never same that card. What about the 7, 8, 5, 6, saming the other 8? Well, between the two hands, how many 5s up are there? 0. Right? Sames are just hard to get. And especially in a world where you're not in, like, every card is... You can't pair your cards, right? Sames are going to be less and less likely as cards are forced to have different kinds of numbers on them. So we're kind of just playing plus wall combo with the occasional possibility of a same. Could 9-4-3-9 ever get a same in 4? No, it's impossible. Could 9-3-4-9 ever get a same in 4? No, it's impossible. Are there any possible sames that could conceivably happen? 1-7-9-7 could get a same in 2 if for whatever reason a 9-up faced from 5. But basically, there just aren't going to be sames. We're basically playing plus wall combo, which I'm not saying is the end of the world or anything, but it means if you can't take something, you can't take it. And so I was looking for moves in 5 or 7 for Smokes because I wanted to interact, but I was being dumb because I was assuming plus was on. It keeps flickering on and off in my brain whether plus is on. But at that point, it was flickering off. Apologies for that. My commentary is, alright. They've made a good point. They said 2 horrible people were playing for TW, so I went and assumed they meant this game, but no, they meant Seto and Turds playing for Trade Wars. Obviously an excellent point. Those 2 are clear doofuses, neither of them even members of the perfect and wonderful clan Avalanche. One sec. So yeah, alright. Okay. We're back. We're thinking. Maybe. Alright. Smokes has picked... Stuff has picked up a card. 1789. Probably headed for 2 then. Right? Yeah. Now we have questions. So if 9, 3, 4, 9, and 5, I think there's kind of 2 things to check. One is, can 9, 4, 3, 9, and 8 just kill you? And 2, do they play 9, 4, 3, 9, and 6? Now you could say they could set something up. They could play, for instance, 9, trying to pair 6 and 8. But the main weakness of 8 is it can get comboed from 7 with 4, 9, 8, 5. And it's hard to remove those from this board in a useful way. Maybe you could say you could meet 5 and 7. But I guess I just don't believe it. That's possible, though. Maybe I should believe it. I don't think I do, though. So, okay. So 93495, does 94398 beat you? Well, You have a combo in 7 with 4, 9, 8, 5, and the important thing to remember at this point is we're basically playing no rules, so nothing else flips. So that flips everything, and then stuff would play, I'm assuming, 7, 8, 5, 6, and 4, which flips 7 but nothing else, and keeps 8, 7, 8, 1 as sweeper. But then Smokes could play like 7, 8, 6, 5, and 9, and I think 8, 7, 8, 1 doesn't flip enough stuff. So I'm highly skeptical of 9, 4, 3, 9, and 8. I'm not sure it loses, I haven't calculated very carefully, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't win. So the other main potential problem with 9, 4, 9, 3, 4, 9, and 5 is 9, 4, 3, 9 in 6. And this is the move I think has to be refuted. You're down 6, 4, and it's hard to have captures. Because 4 is a dead square. But maybe you can just go 4, 9, 8, 5, and 4? No, 7, 8, 5, 6 sweeps you. So I think 9, 3, 4, 9 is a serious problem with 9, 4, 3, 9, 6. 9, 3, 4, 9, 5. I think you probably can't go 5. I think 6 is a problem. 8, 7, 8, 1 sweeps a lot of endgames. And not being able to take 9, 3, 4, 9 from 4 is a problem. Which means I kind of think you have to go 6. And 6 is not very comfortable. I don't think it's obvious that Smokes can tie here. He played the move I wanted in 3, but this starter was really strong. My guess is, without having done much calculation, I would think you play 1, 7, 9, 7, and 6 and hope it holds. You then have 3 possible captures in 5 after they go 9. Oh, it does give up a same. Does that matter? Not sure if that matters. 1, 7, 9, 7, 6, just as I'm saying same is not a real rule. 1, 7, 9, 7, 6, 8, 7, 8, 1, 5, 7, 8, 6, 5, 9. If they go 4, you can go 8 and you're fine. If they go 7, you can go 8 and you're fine. So the question is if they go 8. So they go 7, 8, 5, 6, 8. And they're up 6, 4. But you can play something like 4, 9, 8, 5, 7, and you hold. So 1, 7, 9, 7, 6, I think... I think 4 might be really scary as well. This is a tough position. Hard to calculate something. My best guess is 1, 7, 9, 7, 4. And he plays it. 6. I meant 6. If I said 4, I meant 6. Smokes plays it. I think Smokes and I have had very much the same instincts this game, but it might not be enough to hold. This looks very dangerous, and I would not be surprised if it's lost. I respect going into the combo, but using the card you're most confident you want out of your hand. I think Smokes' biggest weakness is he calculates quickly, but not very thoroughly. Kind of like what I do when I'm commentating, where I'll like find one line and be like, hopefully that was the key line, and we'll just run from there. Because just talking out lines is a pain. And he has good instincts, which is, at least in my opinion, because, I would have made the same moves here, I think, given the hands. This got really dangerous really quickly. And again, I would not be surprised if it was lost. I think stuff should consider... I think 5 doesn't work. I think 5 doesn't work. You can also, after 5, 9, you could go 8 with 9, 4, 3, 9. But 4, 9, 8, 5 is a problem. Both because it has 7, but also because it can play in 4, and 8, 7, 8, 1 can't take it. Because you can also go 7, 8, 5, 6, and 5. You can choose which cards you're keeping. I don't think 5 wins. But I think 4 is really scary because it's hard for Smokes to go 9, 3, 4, 9, 5 because he gets comboed through 9. So he might be forced to block 9, But what does he block 9 with? He kind of needs to keep 9, 3, 4, 9 in his hand so he can meet 5 with 8. So he has to block 9 with something else. And then there's the question of, can stuff go 8? And I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure. And hold up like 8, 7, 8, 1? Smokes can maybe play 9, 3, 4, 9, 5 there, flip 2, and have just enough to hold. Feels like it just about holds there. I think Smokes holds verse 5 and 4, so we're left with 9. And I think you want to take. I think 8, 7, 8, 1, and 9 is probably the critical move. And then Smokes has to have found a good move. Probably in 5, but maybe in 8. Maybe 9, 3, 4, 9, 5 just works there. Maybe that just works. Because if 9, 4, 3, 9, 8, you combo it, and if 7, 8, 5, 6, 8, you can take it from 7 with 4, 9, 8, 5, and their 9, 4, 3, 9's dead. So maybe 8, 7, 8, 1, 9 is just like a straightforward hold with 9, 3, 4, 9, 5, which doesn't mean I'm not sure the other moves hold, but that seems pretty straightforward to me. Alright, 8, 7, 8, 1 has been picked up. I think this has been a very well played game from both sides. Now, Smokes may be lost and may have blundered it, but it's hard for me to blame him for having done so, because I think this was very oddly difficult. Alright, so we see 8, 7, 8, 1, 5. Now, this was not the move I was most worried about. Maybe it should have been. But I think 7, 8, 6, 5, 9. Makes it 5, 5. If 9, 4, 3, 9... there's a double capture. 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 4. Oh, has he done it? Did I screw up? 7, 8, 6, 5, 9. No, 9, 4, 3, 9, 8 doesn't take anything. So that's not a win. And 7, 8, 5, 6 can be met by 4, 9, 8, 5, and 7. 4 can be met either... 4, 7, 8, 5, 6... 9, 4, 3, 9, and 4 can be met by 9, 3, 4, 9, and 8. And 7, 8, 5, 6, and 4 can be met, at the very least, by 4, 9, 8, 5, and 8. Yep. And 7 can't win. Yeah, so Smokes should hold now. He has picked up 7, 8, 6, 5. Basically, when I think a move is probably right, is when Smokes plays, right? We take about the same amount of time to think a move is probably right. I think. I might be wrong on this. And I have to, like, talk it out and whatnot. But, like, if I wasn't having to talk it out, I think we basically come to a conclusion at about the same time. And then I spend a while calculating various stuff and trying to refute things and all that. And he just makes the move at that point. Which means he is a very good fast time control player. But it also means he blows some end games that he really shouldn't. Because he comes to a conclusion and it turns out to not be correct. Which is very easy to do. I'm going to pop open the solver on the side now. I haven't had it open. Oh, no, I have the wrong thing open. What do I need to run? Forgot how I do solver for games with odd rule sets. I think I know how to get to it. Because our initial solver, which is still the one I like to use because of reasons, we have like a few iterations of it, and the second and third iterations can both run offbeat rule sets, but the first one cannot. But I'm used to using the first, and the first will count how many ties and wins there are for me, and the others will not. So I like the first, but I'm gonna boot up one of the later iterations. My guess is Smokes held the whole way, but I think it's close. Like if we were on a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is second turn wins, 100 is first turn wins, 50 is tie. This felt very close between a win and a tie to me, somewhere around 75 for first turn. Though I tend to overestimate things. I tend to think situations are worse than they are. But I think this was around a 75-ish game. I think this was very close to being winning. And I'm guessing it felt that way to the players. But my guess is it didn't ever quite make it to winning. But I'm not sure. That's the wrong card. Wait, whose hand am I putting in? I got confused. That should be 9439. That should be 7856. Same plus wall combo. First turn, the way I put it in will be red. And okay. I think that's right. Okay, so 1799 went in 1. Alright, stuff checking everything here, as one should do. Okay. This was not winning, but it was somewhat dangerous. Maybe not as dangerous as I thought, but again, I overvalue danger. Alright, good reply in 3. Good move in 2. There were 2 ties. 2 ties after 2. 5 was indeed losing. You had to go in 6 to tie. 2 of the cards in 6 tied. 2 of the cards in 6 lost. Did Smoke find a tie? That's my question for you. Place your bets, folks. Was Smoke's move one of the ties? It was. 4985 was really critical to hold on to. That ended up holding in so many lines. It covered 9439. Its 8 down was really useful. Had to hold on to that. Had to hold on to 9349. But both 1797 and 7865 and 6 tied. Stuff played in 5, where there was only 1 tie, but I think it was a pretty straightforward move. I also thought 7856 and 5 was interesting. There were more ties there, though. Not as good a move. I was also curious if 4 was dangerous. I thought there was a chance something like 7856 and 4 was hard to meet. Bunch of ties there, 7 and 5. Not 9, though. Not 9. I thought you might have to block 9. And then I thought 8781 to 9 was probably critical. But there were multiple ties in 5 and a tie in 8. It's just harder for me to calculate out. So Stuff played the move that gave the fewest ties. And so I was a little down on this move. And I still kind of am, because I think the tie was the most straightforward. Like, I think even if one line has fewer ties than others, that doesn't mean they're equally screw-upable. But in this case, it was probably the best try. So this was the first game of the series that I think Stuff has been ahead in. I think in general the series has favored Smokes, and this was a very good game from Stuff. Alright, we're gonna pause the video, I guess, until the next game starts. I can't flip you over to the solver. Weirdest thing happened. So my friend makes this program, resets up the solver to have pretty graphics and like looks nice, and is just a much nicer look. And actually, I could pop you over for a moment, but just to like show. But it cannot be screenshot, and we have no idea why. If you try to take a screenshot, it'll just show the screen behind it. And I cannot tell it to record the window. It just treats the window as blank. It's wild. No idea why it's happening. So, like, I'm just gonna put in, like, so what I have to do is I have to tell it to look at part of the screen. No, that's not right. This. Where, like, and then I have to move stuff out of the way, and that's the only way it will spot the thing. And in case you're thinking this is not prettier, once I put in something like, give us a level 8 random, with blue to start, all rules, you know, this is clearly much prettier than my normal solvers, but I have to, like, move around where it is on the screen. And what I do is I put it exactly around this distance from the edge, and then I figure out, okay, does this look balanced side to side? Yeah, it looks like the 5s are about equidistant. and then I have to move the recording software off the screen so it won't be shown. And if I need to look at anything else, I have to put it in the other part of the screen over on the left. And it's a huge pain and very weird. That's my... Otherwise, I would be using that as the solver I was regularly showing, and I would flip over to the solver more because it's pretty and interesting. But, as is. Alright, do we have any hand changes? No. Which makes sense to me, because Stuff got a very good position out of the last game, but also if you're Smokes, you survived it, and it is not clear that Stuff can meet you playing 7-2, 8, 8, and 3. I expect to see 7-2, 8, 8, and 3 to start this game, saying, okay, you got pressure last game, but where is your... I have trouble meeting your move, sure, but you have trouble meeting my move, and I get to play first. Now, maybe what we're learning here is basically 7-2-8-8 beats Stuff's hand, and 1-7-9-7 beats Smoke's hand, and we're just going to see, like, okay, Stuff goes 7-2-8-8 and 3, and Stuff will go 1-7-9-7 and 1. I might have just said the names wrong, but 7-2-8-8 goes in 3, 1-7-9-7 goes in 1, and I've created sufficient challenge for you. If 1-7-9-7 goes in 1, then 7-2-8-8 lands in 3, and I've created significant challenge for you. It's possible. One thing to note is after 7-2-8-8 and 3, 1-7-9-7 and 1, Smokes' only capture in 2 is 9-3-4-9, which is also the card he'd like to keep up, because if he could play 9-3-4-9 twice, he'd be great. Or at least, maybe not great. Stuff has multiple 9s to the left. He has lots of options for how to take stuff. But something like, imagine a line like 7-2-8-8-3, 1-7-9-7-1, 9-3-4-9-2, 7-8-5-6-4, 7-8-6-5-7, and if the 9-4-3-9 wants to capture in 5 or 8, then it can get comboed by 9-3-4-9 in 6 or 9. But you can't play 9-3-4-9 twice. So I think more likely is something like 7-2-8-8-3, 1-7-9-7-1, and then 1-7-9-7-2. With a game that looks a lot like the last one, right? Except suddenly instead of... Okay, I called it completely wrong. Does this create difficulties? Yes, it does. It also does create difficulties, and there is a recapture in 2. Okay, this makes sense. I was really focused on the move I saw, but one advantage of this move is Stuff can't play 1-7-9-7 and 1 now, right? And that actually is kind of important, because 1-7-9-7 and 1 has been the sort of critical move in every line. I wonder if Stuff can play 1-7-9-7 and 3, or 1-7-8-9 and 3 and get similar things. Probably 1-7-9-7. 1-7-8-9 looks terrible. But I think what we're going to be seeing here is first turn being able to create a real challenge with their first move, and second turn struggling for ties. If we look at the games we've seen so far, in game 1, Stuff was lost on first turn. But Smokes had a really good way to meet his starter. He did not create a challenge with his starter. It was harder for Stuff to play around it than it was Smokes. And Stuff went for a double same setup, which somehow was terrible. Which is kind of funny, that like the one time same ever shows up on the rule set, it's losing. Then Smokes screwed up the conversion, and we had a tie in game 1. Game 2, Smokes had first turn, and he got an advantage off it. Game 3, Smokes had first turn, and he got an advantage off it. Both times finding ways to create difficulties for Stuff's hand. And so I think that's what we're going to see on this rule set. Is without plus, it is hard to set up against something you don't already have covered. It is very hard to just have everything covered smoothly. So a smart first turn player, which we very much saw from Stuff in the last game, and we saw from Smokes in previous games, is going to find ways to create problems. Is it going to be enough to win? Unclear. but I think this is going to be a rule set where second turn is on the defensive. In general, I think this is, maybe I just say it all the time, but I think it's pretty widely agreed that same plus combo, that turning the walls off favors second turn. That doesn't mean second turn's ahead, but that, like, on average, first turn does a little better than second turn. Taking the walls off moves that towards even or second turn favored. This left the walls on, but took away plus. And I wonder if that moves it fairly substantially to first turn favored. I'm not. I just haven't played like much no rules open. I don't really have a good sense of it. I don't have a good sense of if it's first or second turn favored. But maybe we should understand it as the game is inherently a little first turn favored, and maybe same, but definitely plus move it towards second turn, while same wall and plus wall tend to move it back towards first turn, right? And so all rules in effect is going to be slight first turn favored. The kind of same and plus that helps second turn a little more than first turn are canceled out by the wall rules, and we end up with a little first turn favored. If we get rid of the wall rules, we end up with neutral to maybe second turn favored. And so a rule set like this, maybe I should assume, again, I really haven't thought that much about this. Okay, we do see 1797 and 3. And I think we're now going to see a move in 2. I'm not sure what move exactly. Again, you can't take in 6, so you want to get rid of it. Like, you're never going to set up a square you don't already have. But maybe Smokes' stuff is in better shape this game than Smokes was last game. And I am thinking that maybe 7288 and 3 was a little better than 4985 and 1. Because stuff has 9439 and 4 when he wants it, right? He will have a way to take and lock in an extra card if he wants it, right? Like, if Smokes plays 7865 and 2, then stuff will probably play 6, not 4. But him having a threat in 4 is useful. Last game, if we think about it, where stuff played in 1 and Smokes played in 3, Smokes never really had a threat in 4, so he needed these uncomfortable moves in 6 to hold on. And they did. He defended really well. I really like how both players played that game. But I think this game we can see the pressure should be lower, right? Like, there should not be as much. And you might say, well, you liar, 7288 and 3, if stuff went in 1, has the same problem. Stuff has a threat in 6. But 9439 is better landing in 4 as a lock in a card than it is landing in 6. Because if it lands in 4 and the other person flips it, you'll always have ways to flip it back the other way. Well, if it lands in 6 and the opponent flips it from 9, you could run out of captures. So I think, like, if we pretended that stuff had the 1797 and 1 and Smokes had the 7288 and 3, Smokes can do something like 9349 and 2, and if stuff goes 9439 and 6, if stuff goes the kind of attack Smokes' card rather than defend his own card path, then Smokes can play... maybe he has nothing for 9 there. Yeah, I want him to play 9349 or 7288 there, and he's used both of them. So maybe it just doesn't work out card-wise, but it felt a little better to me, but the difference is pretty marginal. I think stuff's going to hold this game pretty comfortably, and we have sort of seen a turn in the series here. I've talked a lot about how no one really gets super difficult positions and holds more than a few times. And I think last game Smokes had a really difficult position, I should say. Like, I guess you were always going to play 6 with one of those 2 cards, but I think the 2 moves in 6 were really scary to play. I think they both felt very uncomfortable to put there. So I think that was a difficult spot. But Smokes had big advantages the first 3 games. Not huge. One of them he was winning, the other 2 he wasn't. And in neither of them did I think he's not winning, but it's too hard to find the tie. In both, it seemed reasonable, like you'd expect the tie to be found. A really big percentage of the time. But Smokes had clear advantages for 3 games, and it looked like he had the hands better, and he had the rule set better, and he was playing better. Today's 2 games, it's looking like, and we see stuff ready to play already, it's looking like we've gone from, doesn't matter, first, second turn, Smokes is playing to win, Stuff is playing to tie. Today, we saw the first game where Stuff had, like, real winning chances, and now we're seeing him, I think, pretty comfortably neutralizing Smokes' position. Now, my guess here is 7-8-6-5 in 7 is the highest pressure. And maybe that's a real try. 7-8-6-5-7. Makes it 5-5. 9-3-4-9 is a pretty good sweeper in a lot of lines. 7-2-8-8's not so bad a sweeper in some lines. But I don't think it's much. I think this is a tie. Yeah, I think it's a tie. I think the main line looks something like 7-8-6-5 in 7. Let's say 1-7-8-9 in 5. Stuff leads 6-4. And then 9-3-4-9 in 8, making it 5-5, and 7-2-8-8 is enough of an up-down sweeper to hold the tie. Yeah, so we do see it. Smokes very much just every point, except for his move in 1 instead of 3, but I think there were very similar ideas, making the move that seemed natural and best to me, but playing it quicker than I would, for whatever that's worth. But I think this is going to be tie number 5 shortly, and I think no mistakes made. But the first game where, like, we've gone from 3 games where Smokes was clearly way on the front foot to a game where Stuff was clearly ahead, and this game where I think Stuff was very safe, right? This was never dangerous for Stuff. So is a 2-game sample like this where we've gone from, on my 0 to 100 scale, kind of, if we say 100 is Smokes favored and 0 is Stuff favored, like Smokes has been sitting around like a 65-70 for 3 games, to the last 2 games where it's been more like a 30 and a 45. Is that enough to move you to Stuff's going to win this match? I don't know. I've been thinking about trying to make a better prediction system recently. This is part of why I'm talking about this. That doesn't just go based on results, but goes based on how dominant those results were. Because there are some games where my advanced nonsense, whatever, that may or may not say sensible, useful things, is like, this was a tight game where someone happened to eke out a win, but most of the time a game that looks like that is not a win. Most of the time it's a tie. And there are other ties where it's like, obviously that player massively outplayed the other player and was incredibly unlucky not to win, right? And there are other wins where it's like, yeah, that player absolutely whomped them, right? Just absolutely destroyed them, versus wins where, like, just snuck it out, right? And I was wondering if a prediction system based on being able to evaluate kind of those kind of differences would be better at predicting actual performance, and maybe could predict specific matchups too. Like, maybe could say, this player has a kind of wide range of performance, this player has a narrower range, that's going to lead to this win percentage, while if they were both a narrow range, it might lead to this different win percentage, right? Like, imagine a game where you can score between 0 and 10 every game, and you're really good at it. You usually score an 8, but occasionally a 9 or 7. And I'm not very good at it. I usually score a 5, but occasionally a 6 or 4. You're going to beat me every time, right? Because the worst end of your range is a 7, and the best end of my range is a 6. But let's say there was someone else. Say their name's Smokes. Like me, they're not very good at it. They average a 5. But they're all over the place. Sometimes they get a 2, sometimes they get an 8. If I play them, I'm going to run even with them. We both average a 5. You know, they're going to have this wider range, but I'm going to beat their 2s, I'm going to lose to their 8s, and we're going to run about even in the middle. But if you, the good player, who is usually an 8 but sometimes a 7 or a 9 plays them, you would always beat me, but you won't always beat them, because sometimes they'll put up a 7 or an 8, and that has a chance to tie or even beat you if they get an 8 when you get a 7. So, and I think some players just have more extreme results than others. So if you're consistently good, you might have less chance to beat a great player than someone who is inconsistently good. But the consistently good player will beat an okay player more often. And I think a system like this might be able to capture that kind of thing, that looks at the actual trajectories of the games. So we saw 7, 8, 5, 6, 5 as expected. Smokes went 7, 2, 8, 8, 8. Oh, well, I was thinking 1, 7, 8, 9, 5, so I had this slightly different. So I guess there were more choices this way. Yeah, and the 9, 3, 4, 9 is sufficient to hold this. All right, tough games. Where do you go from here? I would change hands if I was Smokes. I'm not sure what I'd change to, but I think at this point I would conclude I am no longer troubling stuff, and I am having some troubles myself. Not because I'm playing badly, because if I'm Smokes, I think I'm playing fairly well here. And I think I've played great. I think Smokes has played great till this point. But these last 2 games have not been pressure. So I would think, okay, Stuff's hand is doing much better for him. He is likely to stick. He does not have a 9 to the right. And he cannot really deal well, maybe. He does have trouble with like 8/8s for 3 or for 9. So I would think you keep the 8/8 for 3 or 9, but you gotta figure out some way to meet 1, 7, 9, 7, and 1. So do you switch your 7, 8, 6, 5 just to 7, 8, 5, 6 and just say, I have 1 covered, right? I make this small adjustment to my hand and suddenly I'm covering something I wasn't before that's been really annoying? Maybe you just do some little tweak like that, but you just try to make more of the plus walls line up in your favor. Because I think your hand already has the stuff that your opponent has trouble taking. And so you should probably stick with that. But if you could line it up just a little safer on the plus walls, or a little more threatening on the plus walls, maybe that gets you a chance to put pressure on again. Because these games look pretty convincing to me that Stuff has an organized, strong game plan against what you're doing. And from Stuff's perspective, I would just keep running this, right? And like keep running this game plan of like 1797 goes on the top, and that is creating real problems for my opponent, and I have pretty safe paths to tire advantage so far. So I think it makes sense from Stuff's perspective to stick, and from Smoke's perspective to make a change, not a drastic one, just a little, I need to pick up some things I'm not currently picking up, so this doesn't work as cleanly for you and you need to find a new plan. And I think my hand is already kind of has basically the optimal corners to be annoying for you to take, but I need stuff that can take you slightly more, and I just have to make slight tweaks to line that up. That would be, I think, my next try. Alright, we'll pause. Actually, we'll end the video and wait for the next game.